It's the 24th of November 2025. All the whales we've noticed, I'm going to show you a bunch of the examples here after this song, are refusing to eat. I don't know if that's the way to put it, because they're all showing up emaciated everywhere. But let me explain it to you. I'll show you the documentation of what I'm talking about right after this song. It's called Pink Hydrogen. Official video. You'll find it at James Lucid on YouTube. Here you go.
They say it's clean, just in bright light, but beneath the gloss, there's nothing right, nothing right. They say it's safe, they say it's pure, nuclear reborn, that's the cure. Wrapped up tight in pastel tones, hide the flaws, mask the bones. Trojan horse wrapped in gloss. Look real close, there's danger there. They say it's safe, they say it's pure. Painted pink, they laugh and cheer. Trust us, nothing to fear. Fuel rods turn, the cycle spins. While they cash out, everyone grins. Sure, it's all safe here. But the cost they won't make clear. They say it's fake, they say it's pure. Painted pink, they laugh and cheer. Trust us, nothing to fear. Fuel rods turn, the cycle spins. While they cash out, everyone grins. Sure, it's all safe here. But the cost they won't make clear. So call it pink and mask the stain. Paint over waste, dismiss the pain. Keep the cycle, keep the game. Disguise the threat, shift the blame. Trojan tricks and faces bright. Tell us lies wrapped up in light. Only keep the game, shift the blame. It's painted pink, it's all a show. Pink hydrogen wrapped up neat. Nuclear's tricked, disguised as clean. Painted bright for all to see. A scheme that leaves us lost as a ball in tall weeds. A Trojan gift, dressed in a lie. A polished mask for what's so right. The future's here, they say it's bright, but hidden deep it's not so light. They say it's bright, they say it's bright, say it's bright. Pink hydrogen wrapped up neat. Nuclear's tricked, disguised as clean. Painted bright for all to see. A scheme that leaves us lost as a ball in tall weeds. They sell us dreams, they paint it bold, but what's hidden there is cold. A polished face, a crafted guise, pink hydrogen, their perfect lie. Their perfect lie. What's this, what's left inside? A future built on what they hide. And mask the stain. Paint over waste, dismiss the pain. Keep the cycle, keep the game. Disguise the threat, shift the blame. Tricks and faces bright. Tell us lies wrapped up in light. The cycle, keep the game. Pink hydrogen wrapped up neat. Nuclear's trick, disguised as clean. Painted bright for all to see. A scheme that leaves us lost as a ball in tall weeds. Pink hydrogen wrapped up neat. Nuclear's trick, disguised as clean. Painted bright for all to see. A scheme that leaves us lost as a ball in tall weeds. They sell us the paint, the turf white. Nothing different from gloss, there's nothing white in right. They sell us dreams, they paint it bold, but what's hidden there is cold. A polished face, a crafted guise, pink hydrogen, their perfect lie. Their perfect lie.
Perfect lie.
What's left inside, a future built on what they hide.
Call into these shows 709-740 in Canada 4076.
Nuclear's trick, disguised as clean. Painted bright for all to see. A scheme that leaves us lost as a ball in tall weeds. Pink hydrogen wrapped up neat. Nuclear's trick, disguised as clean. Painted bright for all to see. A scheme that leaves us lost as a ball in tall weeds. Pink hydrogen wrapped up neat. Nuclear's trick, disguised as clean. Painted bright for all to to see a scheme that leaves us lost as a ball in tall weeds. A Trojan gift, dressed in a lie, a polished mask for what's awry.
Excellent. Excellent. My plan is all coming together. Just like I was smart, M-A-R-T, smart. Ugh. Any other subject, I might probably be cheery all the time. And nuclear doesn't. It's just not a fun. It's just not a fun subject. We do the best we can around here, but yeah, a bit of a struggle. How come the whales are all emaciated? You see the peanut head, shoulder blades, the spinal cord defined right down the back of it. This is Taiwan's president. One of them's in jail for sedition, I think it is, or treason, where he invoked the martial law because protesters wouldn't go away. Kind of like Canada done. United Kingdom most expensive. We're going to get through this story, then we're going to cover some die-offs. I got to get a show done. I got over 1,100 of these types of screen captures of die-offs from the last few weeks to get through. Paul keeps getting bigger. Not even trying. UK most expensive place to develop nuclear power. I got to save that headline. That's priceless. The most expensive. That's to say the least. Yeah, no, I got about $5.4 billion. Maybe six. We could probably do it for $6 billion. They're public, citizens. So anyway, what is it now? It's 48 billion or something. There's nowhere near finished. It's full of rats. Right, the rats got everything eaten alive there. The site is infested. It's you're just begging for a nightmare. So what they're going to do is just relax all the rules and regulations, and just trust the journeyman welders and carpenters and pipe fitters, and they'll do a good job. So what they're saying is they can't build a reactor unless you... And just wait till you hear how they framed everything. Holy crap. We got all these emaciated whales all over the freaking planet, every species. UK has become the most expensive place in the world to build nuclear power plants according to the government. No, according to everybody else. The government's the last to acknowledge it. Review which criticizes overly complex bureaucracy about the sector. Overly complex. It takes 1 million companies just to build a nuclear plant, the parts and all the material. And so there's 1 million things that can go wrong. It's the most complicated energy on the entire planet, industry on the entire planet. I'll show you some of the ways later, hopefully we'll get to. The report, which was commissioned by Prime Minister Sir. If you put a Sir in front of his name now, what? I got to get down on my knee and kiss his fucking ring every time he goes past me or something? A radical reset of the rules around nuclear power could save Britain, you mean the invaders, that's who owns the country now, tens of billions of dollars in cost, and reverse the industry's decline in recent years. I mean, I'm in a spot where there's 500,000 people, right? The unemployment is at total is 240,000 or something. They brought in 380,000 invaders over the last less than 3 years. Guess what's happening now? Everybody's quality of life have dropped to nothing. And these people are sucking up every job out there. It won't be long now before the people here have to go away to get a job. It's absurd. We're about to become a minority here in less than 3 years. When we went from about 2%, it was done on purpose to destroy the people's ability to have a rational thought. Too busy trying to survive all of a sudden, right? Less than 3 years. A radical reset, and the rest of them are on welfare. The system is already bankrupt. We're the only bankrupt place in Canada, apparently. And then for 3 years, you haven't stopped bringing them in there. They say they're going to slow down a little bit. They're not going to stop, but they're going to slow down a bit. This is exciting. A radical reset of the rules around nuclear power could save Britain tens of billions of dollars in costs and reverse the industry's decline in recent years. No, what could save the British tens of billions of dollars in costs is geothermal. Or if they had just went ahead and done geothermal. And instead they insist that, like the nuclear power in the country is 15%. It's 90% of their nightmare, but it's 15% of their energy. It's 100% of the poison in their air and their water, but it's only 15% of the energy of the country. A radical reset of the rules around nuclear power could save Britain tens of billions of dollars in costs and reverse the industry's decline in recent years. A radical reset of the rules. Radical. In nuclear, you got a radical reset. Let's just get rid of all the rules. Data is bullshit. And net zero targets, which is them saying they can't do it unless we get rid of all the rules. The United Kingdom is also setting up small nuclear power stations. Where are they setting them up to? Let me see their design. They don't have an application into the regulatory agencies. They don't have a design. The Rolls-Royce is a massive reactor. It's 0.5 gigawatt. It's a massive reactor. Right there, at a time when they said, it's going to be 300 megawatts. And then they said, well, no, it'll be 450 megawatts. Now they're saying it's 500 megawatts. They got to use plutonium X-oxide fuel. It's going to cost 3 times more than a conventional reactor, twice the size. But we're going to call it a small modular reactor because that's what the plan says. The risk associated with nuclear energy should be brought in line with the rest of the world. The risk associated with nuclear energy. It's hard to believe I just said that, as if there's no risk. These people are insane, boy. So, this was a study of 1 million atoms of Xenon-133. This is a plume model based on 20 days. Now, it doesn't travel. It travels with uranium, plutonium. The biggest byproduct is curium isotopes. How could the risk be any bigger than covering our planet with radioactive fallout that attacks everything with replicating cells for millions of years? That no species has an autoimmune trigger to defend against. What specifically exactly could be worse than that again? I'm kind of confused. Should nuclear power plants' fuel pools be described as biological weapons and extinction machines? They're perpetual machines for elements that nothing on the planet has an autoimmune trigger to defend against, and that happens to attack everything with replicating cells with energy almost at the speed of light. So no matter how infinitely small something is, if it's traveling at the speed of a light and your body's not acclimated to it through genetic superior selection, it's a big deal. It wrecks your chromosomes, your cells, your DNA. These are the catalysts for cancers and illnesses and diseases and autoimmune deficiencies and injuries and illnesses. Should nuclear power plants' fuel be described as a biological weapons? Well, that's what they described that the doctors did in the 50s and 60s. Probably the 70s and 80s, who knows? But at least the 50s and 60s, we can quantify that assertion. And is it an extinction machine? Well, yeah. Yeah. Covers the whole planet in just a couple of weeks with more than enough to poison the thyroid glands of every species, and by proxy then you restrict the reproduction cycle of each species. And the more their exposure they're getting, and for the longer, then the bigger that particular attribute of less species is prolific all of a sudden, because the species can't reproduce. It said the UK, guess what happens eventually? Yeah, it takes some decades, but we're 80 years down that road now. And we had a big pulse event called Fukushima. It said the United Kingdom excessively risk-adverse policies in place. United Kingdom, who through 11 administrations refused to acknowledge to the sailors that the nuclear test they were exposed to was worse than a banana. That government, We had to poison the whole country every day from Sellafield reproduction site. There's 8 million liters a day going into the Atlantic Ocean. I got a good show for you tonight. If I can get to it. I got a lot. We're never going to get through it all, so we start rolling. Nuclear plants, also known as disease factories, which generate electricity by using atomic reaction to produce heat. So the fuel is splitting atoms, and that atoms is heating the water. The water is boiled. It needs 1 million gallons a minute, so it produces a lot of heat. It's equal to 6,450,000 one-ton pickup trucks of water in 24 hours. Got to be boiled. That's why you need 2 gas, oil, and coal plants to feed them, because you need some electricity. Each reactor has that attribute. So splitting atoms is how they boil water. So if you doubt the things I'm talking about, then all you got to do is go out and look for yourself of how many atoms, find that answer. How many atoms does it take to boil a glass of water? Hey, Siri, how many atoms does it take to boil a glass of water from a nuclear plant? Rough estimate can be made.
Here's an answer from ChatGPT.
Heating from 20 degrees Celsius, blah, 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 joules. No, we want physical atoms, not joules. How many atoms does it take to make a joule?
Here's an answer from ChatGPT.
How many atoms from a nuclear reactor does it take to boil enough water to make a joule?
Here's an answer from ChatGPT.
And it wants to make diamonds, not... I should have said a kettle of water. Let's keep going. So, the question is, how many atoms have to be split to boil water to make a cup of tea for me or you right now, right here, today, right this second? How many atoms does a fuel rod have to split and produce enough heat to boil enough water to make, for me, to have a cup of tea? Now, how many atoms does it take to do that for 1 million people every minute? How many atoms does it take to boil enough water to power to produce 3,500 gigawatts of power every minute? Because that's basically what the planet is using, right? By the way, this year should be 924 gigawatts just of solar coming online, new electricity in a 12-month period. I actually got that coming up. Which generates electricity by using atoms. So when you take it out of the reactor and put it in a fuel pool every 12 months, 14 months, a third of the reactor, it's still splitting atoms. But it's not contained anymore, so those atoms are always going up to tall, skinny stacks at nuclear plants, which, coincidentally, almost all of them are easy to find. They're surrounded by farmland as far as you can see. That's another way to get you poison your children and your elderly and your loved ones and your victims in your schools, is by poisoning your food source in the supermarkets, by situating almost all the nuclear power plants are in prime farmland. Not average farmland, but very active prime farmland. That's a standard picture of a nuclear power plant right there, look. You think that's an accident? The fuel pools, the atoms were those. See the two tall, skinny stacks in the middle over there? The red stripes, white stripes. That's the fuel pool emitter. Worldwide nuclear renaissance. What are they talking about? There's currently 376 gigawatts. That's both operational and under construction reactors. Where would that show up as under the search? How desperate are they to prop up the industry that showed up in the search engine for the first number? As of 2025, the global nuclear power capacity is approximately 376 gigawatts. You know, if you include the ones we're going to have up and running in the future. Not 2025, but somewhere in the future. So we almost doubled that last year in just solar. Approximately 347 in 1995. So if you take away 25 gigawatts or so, that's not up and running, but they're including it in that number to make it look good. And you put it with the gigawatts they had in 1995. They have the same gigawatts now as they had in 1995. There is no nuclear renaissance. You feel me? Hey, yeah, feel me? You guys, bear with me. Nuclear, the lies that never stop giving us misery worldwide. There is no worldwide nuclear renaissance. If you got the same gigawatts in 1995 and as you have today, I'm just saying, I'm not trying to be rehearsal. Global solar power installations may hit 660 gigawatts in 2024. And we believe, I think it came in a little above it. So they're expecting that growth rate to be by 40%, which is an extra 264 gigawatts this year on top of last year, which is 924 gigawatts. And 924 gigawatts is 27% of the gigawatts we're using every minute on this planet, which is averaging 3,365 gigawatts. That's what we're using average on our planet each day. The world's average continuous electricity use is about 3,365 gigawatts. And solar this year might come in at 27% of the entire planet's electricity. Nuclear, meanwhile, has been just looting 195 countries in accelerated rate because they're becoming obsolete. But they rather poison the whole planet before they go away and contaminate all our water and food sources and all the land, all the oceans, all the seas, because that's what they've been doing for 80 years. They can't give up their gig, you know. Limitations on exposure to radiation are stricter in an energy setting than in a dentist or doctor, he said. Like, when a nuclear plant is finally ready to be decommissioned, until recently, until they changed all the rules, 95% of it was neutron enriched, right? All the cement, the sidewalks, the steel, the coffee rooms, everything, the offices had neutron damage. And that was considered nuclear waste, and that's supposed to be stored for infinity in a controlled environment isolated from Earth. They've never done that. In 80 years, they could have done it anywhere in the last 80 years. They refused to do it. Yeah, they isolated it by dumping it in your oceans. It was isolated for just... When the drums get down about 100 feet, they crush. And because the top and bottom are crimped on, we've released all that radiation. France just acknowledged a few months ago they're going to try to clean up 200,000 barrels they dumped in one spot. You got any idea how many they dumped? You know, when you consider what they've done to the Marshall Islands, or to the French Polynesians, you can't keep up with the madness that this industry has perpetrated upon the species and humanity. Motorways would be very useful if we all drove at 5 miles per hour. Now, I was trying to make a comparison. Sort of what we're doing in the nuclear safety. They're always driving at 5 miles per hour. Yeah, because you have an accident, you destroy the whole industry. Or you got to pay the media absorbent amounts of money to cover it up, which is what they've been doing for so long now. It's built into their budget. The government is expected to address the report findings later this month. The report's findings later this month in the budget. In other words, they'll get it. We give them whatever they want. We give them all the money. We give them all the authority. We give them our firstborn children, for goodness sakes. They take whatever they want out of the universities. And if you put in the amount of studies, the carbon footprint of the amount of the studies that have been done for the nuclear industry worldwide, you probably wouldn't be able to talk for 5 days if you actually understood the enormity of what I just said. The precious metals, the resources, the animals, there were cruel experiments they done to them, just cruel stuff. Energy Secretary Ed Miliband said this government, United Kingdom, is delivering a golden age of new nuclear as we drive for energy and abundance. These people are insane. Geothermal does a much better job and will do it right away. It doesn't have to be nuclear. He framed it as if nuclear is nuclear or nothing. We need to drive forward with new nuclear in a safe, afford, fix and repair daily. You spend $100 million a year just on maintenance. Wait. UK is among 30 other countries who signed a global pledge to triple their... Well, the countries didn't. It was whatever useful idiots you sent down to the constipated parties, conference of parties. They signed our countries away. We didn't give them a blank check and say, here, go do this or go do that. They're our government employees. They're not supposed to be running around with blank checks doing whatever UN tells them to do, who has no sovereignty over our country. We have no need to implement any of their whack job routines. And he bid to cut carbon emissions. Carbon. You know, the stuff that all the species are made up of. Carbon. Her cases, boy. What are you more worried about? Carbon, which, you know, if you want to grow bigger, you got to have carbon. You want plants, you got to have carbon. You want oxygen, you got to have carbon. If you want insects and birds and mammals and animals and puppies and partners, or you want trees, or you want houses, cars, you want anything at all, you need carbon, right? Meanwhile, this is nuclear going on for 80 plus years. This is the Neptunium-239 radioactive fallout 20 days later after Fukushima covering the whole planet. It decays to plutonium, stupid. You pro-nuclear, I'm talking to. It decays to plutonium. Everybody in every species now has been infected with plutonium fallout. Plutonium killed all the animals and all the experiments and multiple tumors. Britain's existing nuclear power station accounts for 15% of electricity generated in 2024. Oh, wow. Your country's going to fall apart if you don't have a nuclear renaissance to replace the ones that you're going to close in 2030. Like, these are just simply the worst humans conceivable. They don't know what they're doing. They're just doing what they're told. They're saying what they're told to say. Or this is orchestrated by UN's little lapdogs. Weirdos that have slowly now have compromised every facet of humanity. 15%, so you got what? Going to wreck the whole planet for 15% if you don't get... your country's going to fall apart if you don't replace that with something else on a nuclear reactor. The United Kingdom runs non-nuclear reactors but are aging, with 8 set to shut by 2030. So you won't even have the one they got now up and running by then. New plants will take several years to come online. Several years, you say? Have you looked at the reactor you're building there right now? Beyond the UK, France plans to build at least 6 nuclear reactors. So what? 6 gigawatts. Solar's going to produce almost 900 gigawatts this year. And we're supposed to what? Cry with joy because 6 reactors are coming on in France. Of all, who cares about France anyway? The freedom fries, except for the freedom fries. The U.S. completed its first nuclear reactor in over 3 decades last year. That's some nuclear renaissance right there, boy. They got one there in the United States last year. In 3 decades, that's pretty darn good. It's nuclear, right? It's complicated. So France is going to build 6 reactors. Holy shit. My mind is blown. I got to go get stocks. Holy shit. Do I buy stocks in solar, which almost 900 gigawatts this year, or do I buy stocks in nuclear, which is almost 2 gigawatts this year? I don't know what to do. I'm confused. I need somebody from the World Nuclear Association of the United Nations to tell me what to do. I don't know what to do. New plants will take several years to come online. Into your dreams. Several dozen years, like the United States just done. Like, it's hard to comprehend what I'm reading there, that's all. I'm trying to be rude. I'm not trying to offend anybody, okay? I'm not trying to do that. Germany has phased out its use of nuclear power. That's a win there for the nuclear industry. Development of nuclear energy remains. They still got to take back their nuclear waste from France. They sent it to France to get it processed into mixed oxide fuel or weapons. With public opinion shaded by high-profile safety incidents. With public opinion shaded by a couple of incidences that people know about. If the world understood 1/100 of the things the nuclear industry had done, they would get scuttled right away, including Fukushima. Let me think of a few other places. Savannah River, 800 square miles, kilometers, 310 square mile nuclear wasteland. Los Alamo, and all of these are on the biggest aquifers, by the way. 22,000 acres, 89 square kilometers. On one of the biggest aquifers in that part of the country, where they spent $50 million on the aquifer trying to stop nuclear waste from ending up into it, long after they'd done the damage. Santa Susana is brutal, the nuclear meltdown. Idaho National Laboratory is disgusting. 890 square mile nuclear wasteland that contaminated your whole planet from the emissions. They have multiple events there. Lawrence Livermore National Laboratories, Oak Ridge National Laboratory, the Waste Isolation Pilot Project, where they had kitty litter, caused an issue, and it cost them $6 billion to fix it. But it wasn't a nuclear meltdown, Dana. We dug a whole new isolation area in the same area, but there was no damage. Pacific Northwest Laboratory, 5,000 staff. Chalk River had 2 meltdowns in the 50s in Canada. Sandina National Laboratory, Albuquerque, 35 square kilometer nuclear wasteland. Argonne National Laboratories, 1,700 students, 7 kilometers, square kilometers. Nevada National Security Site, 3,500 square kilometers. That's a massive nuclear wasteland where they done the underground nuclear testing to split the earth open, and all the emissions came right back into the environment. It was underground, and then it was right above ground at very high speeds. Thomas Jefferson's National Laboratory, 700 people. Hanford, 585 square miles. I mean, they're expecting it's going to cost $760 more billion to come close to mitigating something. But they're talking about 177 tanks, 300,000 gallon tanks. They actually dumped 1.4 million of them into the soil in 41 miles of unlined trenches, 450 billion gallons, which is equal to an aquarium 6 feet. This is dehydrated, so brutal releases. And then the sludge, 6 feet wide aquarium of nuclear waste splitting atoms, 518 feet tall, wrapped around the entire planet. Perpetual, never-ending. These things are never-ending disease factories. They're hemorrhaging radiation into your environment. And this is nothing. Brookhaven National Laboratory, out in New Jersey, is it? Out past, out on that strip. McAllister, they have 1,000 buildings there, right? They make weapons for the military. They only make depleted uranium munitions. There's 1,800 people work there. All they make is dirty bombs. Like the 155 millimeter, for instance, for the Abrams tanks, and the A-10 Warthog, all it shoots is those dirty bombs. The Bikini Atoll, radioactive fallout over 1 million square kilometers. Santa Susana was equal to 463-mile islands meltdowns worth of radioactive fallout. 1959. Just one of the nuclear tests at the Bikini Atoll was equal to over 1,000 Nagasaki bombs for radioactive fallout and damage. Castle Brava, which is the one I was just talking about, 1,000 Nagasaki bombs. Russia has 18,000 radioactive objects in the Arctic. Some of these objects are container ships full of nuclear waste and reactor cores. Submarines with weapons and double reactor cores. There's 18,000 objects. Wind scale contaminated many countries, all of Europe and the Arctic, same as La Hague in France. You got 8 million liters a day going into the Atlantic from wind scale, from the number 4 reactor meltdown in 1957, the plutonium mixed oxide breeder reactor. Donneray figures it's going to take 315 years to clean it up. 315 years. In Scotland was a reprocessing site for United Kingdom. And Fukushima, like, where does that story ever end? Like, you can do show after show after show after show after show after show on just the absurd facets of Fukushima. Public opinion is shaded by high-profile safety incidents. So if you call a plume that covers the entire planet an incident instead of a catastrophic event, you're horrible. You're a pro-nuclear nightmare for humanity. You're the enemy of humanity. Global solar installation may hit 660 gigawatts, and they did, 2024. What was it you were saying? 666. It was just one guy, I should say. And he was pro-nuclear. And storage is available. Like, there's all kinds of storage solutions. Aiming for an annual growth rate of 40%. The only thing that's restricting it to 40%, which is the crazy thing for this year and last year, because the prices of commodities have become so expensive because of the artificial war, the scripted war, so-called war of Ukraine, which is NATO, right? It's a proxy war. Zelensky didn't have nothing. Right? He was just another dictator bum who imprisoned his opposition. And then NATO showed up with endless weapons, all the NATO countries. And the NATO countries were getting them from United Nations countries when they were running low. So in just 2 years, not counting this year, if you count this year, you're almost half of the global capacity of energy in just solar in 2 years. Well, 3 years, I guess. 2023, 20, which was 440 gigawatts. So I'm not counting everything else. We're just counting solar came online. Last year was 660. So it's 1,100 gigawatts. This year, it might be another 900 of just solar, which is 2,000 gigawatts. And worldwide, we're using 3,336 gigawatts each on the average, right? That's how much energy we're putting out there. So that's half. That's over half, over 50% of the total capacity the plant is using. Based on the global electricity data, the world's average continuous electricity use is about 3,365 gigawatts. And in 3 years, we brought online almost 2,000 gigawatts of solar power. So what do you think is going to happen in 2 years' time? Because solar power has grown so much each year, it's so cheaper, so much more efficient. But geothermal, if you use geothermal, and then, for peak energy, you can have storage with solar and wind. And if you spread your wind out along your communities, it's always blowing in most of the communities. If there's a lull in one community, it's not necessarily going to be a lull in all the other communities. Right? That's one of they're like, oh, well, the wind doesn't blow all the time. Well, it does in most of the communities. So if you're, and because Nikola Tesla, we can actually transport energy along very long distance, a useful distance, right? So now the nuclear industry is in full-fledged panic. Just this year alone will be 27% of the total capacity worldwide. But if you look at the 3-year accumulation of solar, right, 1,100 watts total between 2023 and 2024 together. And this year you expect another 900 gigawatts. That's 2,000 gigawatts. And storage, why would you ever use batteries? There's no circumstance I can come up with to use batteries when you have so many better solutions, right? Of lava rocks, sand, compressed air storage, dig mine shafts. You can buy these $300,000 windmills, big windmills. All you do is compress air, and you dig mine shafts, and you store your energy for peak power. Doug Ford here in Canada, in Ontario, closed down 764 wind and solar projects in Ontario, Canada, 2 years ago. And it was $5.4 billion allocated so they can get storage, so they can be a 24-hour operation for each of their districts. So the Fisher stories, that never happened. So you're dealing with madness. You're dealing with an industry, and this can only work if all the universities and all the medias worldwide participate in the lie. You lost everything right away, but everything's in the tanks, and there's only 2.2 grams got out of the building. But don't worry, it's in 1,000 tanks. But you picked up 30 million 1-ton bags. But don't worry, the food is safe. This is madness to suggest it even for a millisecond. Let's talk about the whales refusing to eat. See this? So here's evidence. 7,000 humpback whales starved to death because they wouldn't eat. If we can get a whale whisperer, right, where they'll start eating again, they won't be showing up starved to death everywhere. Now, it takes about a year or so for them to starve so much that they die. And so the whale whistlers, we need a lot of them. Thousands of whale whisperers to get them, tell the whales to start eating, because if they don't eat, they're going to starve to death. Damn it. That was humpback whales. The gray whales done the same thing. So big whales, every species, they're refusing to eat. Now look at the mess we're in. 40% drop. It was actually, by last year, it was 14,000 whales, gray whales, had died out of the 27,000. The 13,000 that are left, 13,500 that are left, 13,000 that are left. Hang on, I'm just going to clear my throat here for a second. It seems confusing, but it's not if you're paying attention. So let me show you what I mean. So it was 40% in 2022. Well, that's changed a little bit. So in 2025, they're starving too. They won't eat. I don't know what's wrong with them, but they won't eat. Like, not doing it. You can't make me. Their poor condition, he said, is due to changing feeding conditions. They're starving. All the migratory whales are starving because they won't eat. They're already in poor shape / starving last fall when they began their 12,000-mile migration to breeding grounds. They were emaciated, not in poor shape, that's / emaciated. They were down to very little blubber, for instance. 12,000 miles is a pretty long way to migrate. You got to swim the whole way. That's a long way if you got to swim it, right? You need some energy. The whales we're seeing are extremely emaciated. See, I tell you, it wasn't me. I'm not saying that. They're refusing to eat. That's proof that I'm right. Right? You know what I mean? Yeah. You know I'm right. They got bulging ribs with shoulder blades and vertebrae visible even from the shore. You shouldn't be able to see the shoulder blades or the vertebrae or their rib cages under no circumstances because they're refusing to eat. They won't eat. I don't know what the hell's wrong with them. I wanted, like when I was young, I wanted to grow up and be a whale whisperer because I was afraid this could happen. They would go on just cranky, right? They won't eat. Now they're all dying because they refuse to eat. They're all emaciated. The mothers are likely too unhealthy to birth and feed a healthy baby. Well, from what I understood, and we cover this nonstop since, Fukushima, is the babies are emaciated too. Now, NOAA and the media, and your loving media, are out there telling you that the whales are killing themselves or they're attacking boats and dying. Or boats are hunting them down or something. I'm not sure. So there have been about 1,200 reports of whales with boats colliding worldwide database launched in 2007. And that story is 2023. And so when you're seeing some of these numbers, 14,000 dead, 7,000 more dead, that's a little higher than the boats, right? Now, we're seeing the same thing with all these species of whales. In 2014, 2015, 2016, when the pilot whales were beaching themselves, they were doing necropsies. They stopped doing them after 2017, right? No, not doing that no more. Too many people paying attention. And they always had empty stomachs. I can show you those headlines. I'm not going to tonight, but you can go to my playlist for die-offs. You'll see that, and then too much more. Okay. The humpback whale in Oregon that they just killed is not very healthy. You can see its vertebrae. You can see its shoulder blades. You can see the peanut head. And all the attributes of those other emaciated whales, right? And we know that the humpback whales are starving it because, you know what I mean? You hear me? You feel me? Now, the natives are eating this particular hump, and you can see the whale is friggin' emaciated. It's the first time in a long time that they've been allowed to eat one of the whales, so they don't care. They're happy. Life is good, I guess. That's clearly, you can see the defining, this is an emaciated whale. Not maybe, it's emaciated. It has no stomach content. I wonder what that means. No stomach content. It's never had no stomach content for a long time. Because look at how emaciated. It takes a long time to be that emaciated. That's clearly an emaciated whale as to get. You can, it had no stomach content. We're going to leave it at that, Dana. You can let your imagination. I don't have an imagination. I'm not allowed to have imagination. I'm only allowed to have a bunch of facts. I don't know why the whales won't eat anymore. Yeah, Fukushima broke the food chain, but the whale had no stomach content. Huh. Well, they know how radiation infects and destroys everything. They're well aware. But I didn't need to see the fact that it had no stomach content. All you need to do was look at the vertebrae and the shoulder blades and the peanut head to know that's an emaciated whale. Unfortunately, we've acquired that eye, that ability, that insight to be able to articulate. Oregon State University will release more details when they get a chance. Maybe not. The whale had no stomach content. As if, the 7,000 humpback whales that recently died, or were acknowledged to be dead and died of starvation, and then you got 14,000 whales since Fukushima died of starvation. Yeah, some of them got hit by shit because they were dead and couldn't get out of the way. Or they were emaciated and couldn't get out of the way. And while the whale remained alive when it came ashore, it was emaciated. They're going to perform a necropsy, animal autopsy, to assess the animal's overall health and help determine why it's stranded. Well, it was stranded because it was emaciated. It couldn't hold his head up anymore. And look at the piece of rope in his mouth. I wonder if that was photoshopped. Adaptive response to ionizing radiation. See, they know everything about how radiation breaks the food chain. And these people don't know any better. They're in the water trying to hold on, stuff something that weighs tons and tons and tons. Well, they used to weigh double that. And you can see its spinal column sticking up. This whale can't survive. It's absurd to suggest it could because it's emaciated. Radiation-induced brain injuries. They know everything about radioactive fallout. They know everything. You see the big wave? A great way to get crushed is go and put yourself where that force is going to come ashore to. It's a emaciated whale. You can see its spine. And they know all the attributes radiation has in all the species. They studied every species. And you. When you see that tail there, that's severe emaciation. At 3 years or older, what's he doing out there? Radiation-induced brain injuries in your humans when you give them radiation. You really think it's different for animals? Beached humpback whale was put down while it was starving to death, emaciated. This is crazy. A narwhal carcass found in remarkable stranding. And that would be a male. This one was a female. This is a crazy story. In United Kingdom Beach in Ireland, for the first time ever in that part of the country, or in that country, after a carcass was found, we get them where I'm to, after a carcass was found washed up on the beach. This is an emaciated animal. We'll get a better picture. It's important we try to find out more about why the species arrived on our coastlines, because it couldn't find food where it's in its own normal million-year migratory route. Findings like this are a stark reminder of the vulnerability of the wildlife in the face of, they can't help themselves, They got to put that there. If there's a dead animal on a whale on the coastline, you got to put the word climate change in the story. You got to do it. You have to do it. You don't got to quantify anything. You just got to invoke climate change. So the average person reads the story and they say, hey, did you hear about the whale? Yeah. And, oh, yeah, climate change, they're saying, Dana. Right, that's what that's all about, so you can't have a conversation with anybody. A remarkable stranding, said and I despise the Irish whale and dolphin group. Same as the British group. I just despise them. I'm sure there's some good people, don't get me wrong. But the management is scum of the earth, man. As our waters warm. However, we recorded another Arctic species, the bowhead whale. They live over 200 years. In Ireland for the first time in 2016, post-Fukushima. So maybe this reflects a breaking down or Arctic ecosystem as the ice melts. This is a conjecture. The population is threatened by the effects of climate change. Yeah, got it there once, you got to get there another time. Just worthless people that write that kind of stuff, eh? So now you can look, you can see the little, start to see the little skinny tail on it. Little tiny tail. You know it's going to be tiny anyway, but it was exceptionally skinny. We got better pictures going. There's a good picture of the tail. Look at the tail. And look at the shape of the body. That's symmetrical, right? It's not a, I should have had a picture of an airwheel for you.
Nuclear Italiano. Ministers sing, they say change is near. But the barrels stay full for 1,000 more years. The sun and the wind could be turning the gears, but they toast to reactors with cheer. The price of the gas, they cry in the square, so they built something slow like they just do not care. The wind and the sun could be turning the gears, but instead they bring back nuclear.
So look at the shape of their bodies, right? See that?
A plant in the south, another up north. But who will remember when funding runs short? By the time they are built, new papers are signed, and the cycle starts over in time.
So look at that picture, then look at this picture.
Freighting, they shuffle the names. Same modular text will be changing the game. But the people recall when they promised it all, and the
and at the very back of the tail, it's just maybe way too thin. Like it shouldn't be that much bigger, but it shouldn't be that thin either. Right? It's got to move that whole body. It's a very long distance, it's great depth. That's a female. That's emaciated. It has all the attributes of emaciated. Just there's no symmetrics and it's very disproportionate to the typical nice, healthy, wide, symmetrical shape, right?
One day they ban it, the next day they cheer. The cycle repeats every year. The people all
so they're refusing to eat World War in all the species.
But in Rome, they just sip their espresso and
I've never seen a lot more predatory attacks from bigger animals than humans. Grizzly bear attack in Canada leaves one dead. Now, I've done research expeditions up there for many years. And that island, that's Bellacula. Also known as Bella Bella, it's a little native community there. That whole area right there is a little settlement there with 26 people. They have a fuel dock, a laundry service. I used to go there all the time. Just we do research expeditions to fuel up the So 11 children, 11 people. One teacher took the whole brunt of the attack. That teacher was killed. I'm assuming it was a male, but I don't know for sure. Some children were sprayed with bear sprays. The teachers tried to defend them. Well, they defended them, actually. The bear still injured 11 children and teachers. One's killed, one's in just critical condition. Don't know if they're going to survive. Two are in serious condition. Two are in critical condition still. People were warned to stay indoors, not go out looking for the grizzly bear. This is a native community, and these are crack shots. They all have serious weapons up there, right? Because you know grizzlies come into your community. And I remember this one time, this native guy calls up the forestry and says, we got a grizzly bear here on Vancouver Island in our community. And he said, yeah. He said, well, you know there's no grizzly bears on Vancouver Island. I said, hang on a second. He takes the gun, shoots the grizzly, says, I got a dead grizzly in my garden. The crack shots, eh? I've encountered them a few times, and it's not very cool at all. People warned to stay indoors, not go looking for the grizzly bear. Because it was on the rampage. 2 people were critically injured. This is a very isolated place, so you wouldn't expect the grizzly to do that. It can't find the deer anymore, see? And we've seen all the emaciated grizzlies in that same area. Let me show you that very quick. They're starving. They can't find, there's no salmon in the river. There's no, because they'll eat deer, they eat moose, they eat elk, they'll eat other bears, they'll eat small mammals. But their big part of their diet is berries, right? Let me just find that story because we covered that lots. There we go, should be right here somewhere. I got that right there. I'm in the right folder, just I got so much unusual mortality events. Whales, number 3, do I have it right there? Grizzly bears. They were trying to blame the die-off. Oh, there it is right in front of my face. Just wait for it, mate. We haven't been really noticing any salmon up here. There was 500,000 or something that went up that particular area. The bears have been getting skinnier and skinnier and getting more aggressive. These are emaciated grizzly bears. That beach, I've been on that beach doing research expeditions after Fukushima. That's severe emaciation. Well, there's supposed to be an absurd amount of food there in the tidal zones. It was stripped after Fukushima. Grizzly bears are bearing the brunt of it. Only 600,000 came out of the 5 million sockeye. Yeah, but they eat grub, they eat other bears, they'll eat moose, they'll eat caribou, they'll eat deer. They're opportunity eaters on top of that, but they eat grass, they eat grubs, they're foragers. They're not totally dependent upon the salmon. There is food there, so why are they emaciated? Because the bioaccumulation from the berries of the radioactive fallout, right? Explosion of sea lion deaths in Peru. There was 3,500 sea lions. So they conflated a bird flu outbreak. And so most people were saying, well, he died of bird flu. But this is what they were seeing. These are severe emaciation. Not bird flu. And the next picture was really hard to look at, but these don't even look like sea lions. They used to dive commercially 6 hours a day on the ocean floor. If I seen that, I wouldn't know what it was. There's never don't like that there. I know it's a sea lion, but that's unbelievable. And so there were, the average person will read the story and see the emaciated animals and say, "Oh, they got the bird flu," because people are very susceptible that are always, that believe in the media. They're very susceptible. They're incredibly susceptible. They're always susceptible to propaganda, and the industry is well aware of that. Grizzly attack on the BC elementary class is the latest in a series of encounters. A guy was bitten in a remote location. 2 grizzly bears attack a couple riding electric bikes here in Canada. There's a lot, right? 2 people are charged with the killing of a grizzly bear. It stalked people and harassed livestock in the weeks leading up to its death. A hunter was attacked by a grizzly. He shot the bear and fought it off, but died in hospital 3 weeks later. The bear was found dead. 2 hikers were seriously injured. The grizzly attacks November 20th, a few days ago. A group of pupils and teachers, while they were having lunches on a trail in Bella Coola, 2 people suffered critical injuries, 2 were seriously hurt, and 7 are treated. One of them died, right? The critically injured. Fish are starving to death. All forms of ocean life are dying in stunning numbers across the Pacific. Well, like, they're just refusing to eat. They're not actually starving to death. They just won't eat. All the species are doing it. All the species, right? They're all doing that on purpose to make the nuclear industry look bad. Right? That's what's going on. Like, they know everything about nuclear. Everything. So they know. We pulled the net up and there was not a thing into it. Alarm feds find bizarre results in survey of the Pacific Ocean. This was the federal government. It's different than anything they've ever seen before. They pull up, they have these big, like, they're like big dragger-looking ships, and all they do is troll the ocean and bring up samples, and the nets were all empty. I was out on research expeditions during that. But you know, if you use your imagination, you can see how radioactive fallout can be an issue. Massive die-offs reported in the Pacific Ocean. No fish out there anywhere. They starved to death. Well, they didn't starve to death per se. They just refused to eat. Total failure in reproduction. They wouldn't have babies either. They done that on purpose to make the nuclear industry look bad. I know what you're saying. You're like, no, Dana, they starved it. No, they were just trying to make the beautiful, wonderful nuclear industry look bad. That's what that was all about. It's like nothing they've ever observed before, because it was a conspiracy of the species to embarrass the nuclear industry after Fukushima. Because clearly radiation is harmless. Look at all these studies. As the scientists, they didn't like nuclear either, right? They're showing you. Billions are being exposed. Reactors will continue to pour water into the Pacific forever and ever and ever. Scientists fear radiation hitting the United States to worsen. Well, you know, the whales don't have to make it worse by not eating. That's all I'm trying to say. And seals and sea lions and the birds, if they would just start eating instead of being on a food hunger strike for 14 years. It's hard to say that with a straight face, by the way. Toxicity evaluation of nuclear. It attacks everything replicating cells. So, animals are starving as the food chain continues to collapse. Mass starvation event plagues the West Coast. Not just one spot, but from Alaska all the way to New Mexico. Massive die-off of sea creatures from California to Alaska, 2017. I was on the ocean doing research expeditions during that period, and it was scary shit. I'll show you coming up. My theory is they're just trying to embarrass the nuclear industry, and all of them, it's a conspiracy between the whales, the seals, the sea lions, the seabirds, to not eat food, die, and looking like they starved to death so the nuclear industry looks bad. Radiation toxicology, ionizing and non-ionizing. Did know a few things about radiation. I can tell you what. Influx of emaciated sea creatures. The animals are starving to death, covered in sores, stunted growth, weak immune system. They're doing this not because there's no food. They're doing it because they don't like the nuclear industry. They're racist and bigoted, prejudiced and biased. That's what's really going on. Bastards. Scientists are out there. They produce around 2 million of these studies of radiation each year. A 100% death rate of baby seals on the California coast, none survived, starving, suffering from a shortage. That's 2016 March. I was out there on the ocean for months at that point. In the Pacific Ocean, extremely thin, all sorts, extremely thin, extremely emaciated. Illnesses, infections, milkless moms abandoning the pups immediately. And it's getting worse. How could it get worse than that? 100% death rate of baby seals. None survived. Because they're trying to embarrass the nuclear industry, clearly. Bastard species. Mind-blowing die-off of seabirds underway from Alaska to California. Unprecedented. Yeah, we've seen the same on the East Coast where 46 million migratory seabirds didn't show up 5 years, for 5 years now. I think they're hiding out, trying to embarrass the nuclear industry, pretending that they're not. You can't put it above the seabirds. You know how slick they are, right? Why they're dying, I'm still baffled. Every bird we're seeing is starving to death, withering away, catastrophic molting. It's due to unknown causes. Nobody knows what's causing it. I got no idea what's causing it. I talked to lots of people. Nobody knows what's causing it. Yeah, we had a lot of radioactive fallout and stuff, but that shouldn't be an issue, should it? There's a plutonium model based on 20 days. Like the plot of a summer horror flick all along the Canada's Pacific coast. The mussels are dying. The bodies are swollen by cancerous tumors. Like, oh my God. Spreading from one species to another like a virus. Okay. The fish are not there. All of them are starving. Countless dead birds reported in the Pacific. There's no seals. Well, like when you find the dead animals, they're not breaking down, and there's no predators feeding on them. Like normally when an animal washes up on the beach, you expect hundreds of birds to descend on them, right? All of them are starving. Animals are acting weird, sick and weak, and too weak to fly, too weak to run. Yeah, I've seen that on the research expeditions. That was horrifying. Can't be radiation. No, radiation like a banana. Bananas can't do that. They seem to be starving. So notice back then they never mentioned bird flus or avian influenzas or stuff like that. They were just, it's a mystery. Never seen it before. Don't know what to say. They seem to be starving. Probably got something to do with the fact they're emaciated, but I'm just saying. Die off of birds all over Alaska. Yeah, there was a million plus of common murres and a million plus of Cassini auklets at that point, right? 2015. I was out on the ocean for 4 or 5 months that year up there. And in the same area. And so what was happening, the common murres will dive 600 feet all day. They'll feed on anchovies and squid and krill and sardines and little herring and small mackerel and stuff like that. Right, the small fries of the species, so to speak. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 inch species. And so they dive 600 feet all day. They were showing up, over 1 million of them starved on their migratory route, which meant they couldn't find food. But the Cassini auklets are microscopic feeders. So they're feeding on zooplankton, phytoplankton, and the pods. They're very tiny microscopic animals. And so they're always eating in one sense. It's very rich food when you're a specialist in that, right? And so you had two different spectrums of the food chain showing up emaciated over vast areas and through the migratory grounds at the same time. Mysterious whale deaths in California. Continuous trends of whales washing up 2015. Sounds familiar, don't it? Sick, starving, emaciated, too weak to swim, hemorrhaging. Does that sound familiar to anybody? That's 2015. 10 years ago. Post-Fukushima. Probably got nothing to do with the fact that radiation causes cancers and all kinds of illnesses and diseases. Fox San Diego sardines, crayfish disappeared from the Pacific Ocean. They just vanished. They starved themselves to death. Make the nuclear industry look bad. Marine mammals are starving, struggling to survive. In the past 5 weeks already, exceeded for an entire year, much larger, well, post-Fukushima year, much larger than anything on record. Not like they weren't expecting it, I can tell you that much. Starving, drooling, brain seizures, suffering seizures, brain damage. Huge increase in dead, sick sea mammals, California. Notice how they weren't talking about domoic acid or blooms and all this other stuff back then for all those years. Now they got their act together. Now they're very coordinated. Sea lions mysteriously vanishing on the other side of the Pacific. We don't know what's happening. It can't be Fukushima. It's like a banana, Dana, so it can't be Fukushima. Can't go same Fukushima. Environmental sources of ionizing radiation and health consequences. Yeah, very little is known about man-made radiation, Dana, except for the 60,000 studies I got. Alarm is record numbers of seals and sea lions are starving to death. Alarm. Really? About time. That's 2014. It just spiked. Calls started coming non-stop. So many unhealthy washing shore. Complex. Multitude of factors. Definitely a mystery. We're hoping it's not the new norm. Oh, yeah, it is. You know it is. Nuclear industry knows it is. Pelicans are starving in the Pacific since 2011. Killing baby birds for food. We're seeing that out here with the seagulls. Breeding success really poor. I believe pelicans are responding to large-scale changes. Sardine crash, herrings, capelin, squid. These are keystone species for the food cycle, right? Mass deaths of sea lions, dolphins, birds. Die-off skyrocketed over the past week. Yeah, radiation could do it, but it couldn't be. Everything's in the... There's only 2.2 grams got out of all those reactors, Dana. It was only tritium, Dana. You fearmonger. Mom, nuclear scientists worldwide. Mom, come down in the basement. Dana's making fun of the nuclear industry. Unprecedented die-off has the potential to be the biggest mortality event in state history, the most extreme they've ever seen. 2016. Fukushima nuclear plume covered most of North America, so lots of it washes back down to your coastlines and into your oceans, right? Now over North Atlantic, the Caribbean, the Northeast coast. Yeah, but it can't be serious because it's like a banana on a potato chip, ain't it? They're eating themselves from the inside. Cancers, liver, pancreas, intestines shut down. Unlike anything doctors have ever seen. 2016. Infested with parasites, immune antibiotics, unprecedented catastrophe that caused the loss of nearly 200,000 sea lions. High concentrations of radiation hit the United States and Canada, rich in cesium. Yeah, well, if it's rich in cesium, there's 100 times more strontium-90 in that same plume. And then all the other isotopes got to be there. You can't just have one without all the fun ones, too. Yeah, it attacks the nervous system, blah, blah, blah. It's just radiation. You don't have to worry about it. As long as you're small, you'll be safe. Unprecedented catastrophe that caused loss of 200,000. Unprecedented catastrophe. Unprecedented. Unlike anything doctors have ever seen. 2016. That's 5 years later. All the banana peddlers right there in the comment section, you can be sure. The ocean is dying. Nobody talks about Fukushima anymore, says a journalist. There's no more fish. The ocean is dying. It's terrifying. We're preparing for the worst. 2015, I was out there on the research expeditions, expecting to find an oasis because I'm stupid. I'm an idiot. I just didn't want to believe it, right? But after 6 years, you're kind of stuck with reality. And it's just reality. You got to deal with it because there's no solutions going the other direction. Starving cow kicks away the calves trying to nurse. Yeah, radiation has some pretty unique properties. Bags of skins and bones. Record number of stranded seals. Population has truly collapsed or gone virtually everywhere. Population has truly collapsed or gone virtually everywhere. It's crazy, isn't it? Statements. Decline of fish is throwing off the ecosystem. Whale numbers drop significantly. Squid are disappearing. Other major die-offs. Mass die-off of mammals, birds, fish being tested for radionuclides from Fukushima. Unprecedented along the United States Pacific coast. That's Associated Press. Now officially they're saying it never happened. No, that was just us. We're foolish. Pacific food web is crashing. 2015. What's going on? Where are the fish? A food shortage all up and down the West Coast. You can equate it to a war zone. Government is getting even worse on the West Coast this year. Experts say over 35,000 baby sea lions could be dead. This phenomenon is unprecedented in scale. Definitely indicates the ocean is not normal. Babies being found severely emaciated. Bizarre die-offs along the West Coast, an animal emergency. Record number of deaths declared unusual mortality events by the government. It's just the tip of the iceberg. Yeah, well, I was out 4 to 5 months a year for that 6-year major reporting period, and I couldn't find it. I'm pretty good. I'm pretty good when it comes to the ocean. I just stayed out there for 4 to 5 months without coming home. The elephant in the room is the Fukushima radiation when it comes to the Pacific Ocean die-offs. Former U.S. government official. The government has totally failed to inform the public about the full extent. The media silence is deafening. The industry knows exactly what radiation was going to do to all the species for 80 years. And then Fukushima was a pulse event. Reports show California sea lions are dying from organs falling into place, tumors, accumulation of pus inside their bodies. The Marine Mammals Center in California, 2014. Like walking skeletons. They were so hungry they were eating rocks. Now, that's not an accident, eating the rocks. I'll explain that coming up. They're all gone. Shock as sardines vanish off California. They didn't find a single one all summer. It's about the entire Pacific coast. We don't know why, says Noah. The young aren't surviving, but they're not surviving. Well, they know why. Plutonium and uranium suspected of spreading throughout the food chain. Well, the biggest byproduct is the curium isotopes, which is lead shielding 20 times thicker than plutonium we need. Federal government declares a rare, unusual mortality event, 2013. 70% of all newborn sea lions may be dying. Troubling. CNN airs troubling images of ill California sea lions like walking skeletons. There's no food out there. Scientists can't figure out why there's a mass starvation of seabirds. Well, this was this. To your left is the species that should be there, and to the right is what was there when I'd done Vancouver all the way to Alaska for 4 to 5 months a year. And this whole operation was a nightmare to build. It was a nightmare to run for 6 years. We done it though. We pulled it off. I'll never know how we survived it. It was clearly the species to your left are exterminated. That's why we went back for 5 extra years to see if they recovered. Because the ocean's supposed to be a soup of life, right? Scientists can't figure out why there's mass starvation of seabirds. Well, instead of the seabirds going ashore at low tide and getting all the food they could ever hope for, there's nothing left. So they couldn't supplement their regular migratory diet by coming ashore like they normally could. So normally there was 700 algae, and then the 700 algae was 5,500 well-known invertebrates without the backbone. So there was enormous amount of food besides all the species, right? Other species. And because we've done this for so many years, then we can say with clarity that it's an extinction event. They're not coming back. Because normally, right, because all of these species to your left would be milking into the ocean, laying eggs, etc., etc. And so the ocean would normally be this big soup of life. So if you plowed in a healthy coastline, these species down deeper and on both sides, and then the soup of life would, be a billion creatures in a glass of water. Eggs and larvae and little tiny microscopic creatures and the phytoplankton and everything else. So that would just recede the beach. So if some species got wiped out, the other ones were still the prime real estate, see? That didn't happen. And we went back for 6 years. So when they say CYCN remains dispersed throughout the water column from the surface to the ocean floor, the biggest byproduct is curium isotopes, not cesium, but for starters. But you're going to have every isotope imaginable. The species to your left are now exterminated. We know that because I went back for 5 extra years and the coastline didn't recede itself. Because you got to realize this is a tropical rainforest. There's 27,000 islands, and the radiation washes back down to the tidal zones. So that the reproduction cycle was interrupted permanently. They're extinct. For sure. The species to your left are extinct. We know that because we done that whole coastline for 6 years, the entire coastline. The entire coastline. And nobody can say we did. Nobody can take that away from us. We done the whole friggin' thing. And that was brutal every single year. Totally unpredictable. The wild, open west coast. And the species to your left are exterminated. That's not an opinion. It's not a conjecture. That's a fact. I provide GPSs of all the places. There's mass starvation of seabirds because the coastline no longer has any species, so there's nothing there for to supplement the migratory diet. And we're assuming that's going to be symmetrical worldwide because of how the radioactive fallout works. That model is just 20 days. When Fukushima may destroy the whole country, collapse of a whole country. No, collapse of the entire planet. So that's crazy that a single site can poison the whole planet. That's incredible. It's either that or all the whales are gone on a hunger strike, and birds and seals and sea lions. That's a possibility. That's a possibility. That could be it. See? I don't know. Almost every nuclear power plant is surrounded by farms. It can't contain the radioactive fallout from the fuel pool. Big trouble. Big trouble. Should nuclear power plants' fuel pools be described as biological weapons and extinction machines? Well, my research expeditions that I worked so hard to provide the documentation. I've done everything I could to keep this whole operation alive and pertinent. And then I do these shows as much as I can handle it, right? And, I'm very lucky that I have the ability to do this. I'm very fortunate. I always feel, every show I feel very privileged that I got another show out there. And I'm censored, I'm hated, I'm stalked, I'm feared and scorned. But I'm actually an okay, sometimes anyway. Once in a while, I'm a reasonable person. I'm a half decent. Well, I'm not the worst person out there. How about that? I'm a reasonable person. When Fukushima, so I'm better than nuclear because at least I'm reasonable. Nuclear's not reasonable. When Fukushima may destroy the whole country, collapse of a whole country. No, the whole planet. You'll learn. I'm only going to repeat myself another 500,000 times before this year's over. So this is the thing about this study here, how the science works. We're only going to talk about iodine isotopes. So when you can find iodine-131 as a very powerful isotope. So now you can extrapolate that there's 10 times more iodine-132, 30 times more iodine-133, 31 times more iodine-129, and that list keeps going. That goes for hundreds of times in different isotopes too. There's a ratio that is known. This is how you can boil water for 1 million homes and businesses by using atoms, right? There's this ratio that is created, and they're pretty firm on it. They're pretty convinced they got it, they understand that particular facet of it. They know that it attacks everything with replicating cells. They're willing to ignore that. And in order to silence you, they built all these nuclear plants surrounded by farms. That way you're too busy trying to survive because you're poisoned and you haven't got enough time to go after them who created it in the first place. You can't contain the radiation from a nuclear site fuel pool. You can't contain it. And it's catastrophic. 24 hours, it's a catastrophic amount. There's 1,000 fuel pools doing that worldwide. Just one is a catastrophic amount, guaranteed eventually to end all the species. We're one of those species. Is iodine-131 killing babies 5,500 miles away? Deaths are up 50%, infant mortality deaths after radiation spiked in tap water. Spiked. That's the prominence? Well, everybody should have moved out of there, see? That's the madness of that statement. 40 million atoms. So a BQ is a pulse of energy almost at the speed of light in every direction, like a bomb. Like you had a bomb held on a piece of string. When it blew up, it went in every direction, right? Well, that's what an atom in your body does. And it wrecks chromosomes, cells, DNA, whether you're a bird or mammal or animal or a human or whatever. And then your body tries to repair the damage every second. It can't keep up with that. And it's trying to do that with white blood cells. And then it has to attack the source each second because it's pulsing energy in every direction. So cesium can pulse 600 feet. So your body can't recover in a second from the damage. And so you have all these damaged chromosomes and DNA and cells and molecules. And you're getting permanent lesions to your organs because of that particular attribute, and birds and mammals and animals. And so this is a cumulative damage. Iodine-129 is so prolific, they've never contained it, they've always released it, and they call it diluting it, which is absurd. It's the biggest betrayal conceivable. 80 years of releasing this prolific. This is around for 150 million years, and they never stopped releasing it for 80 years. There's 1,000 fuel pools hemorrhaging at 24 hours a day. The biggest byproduct, again, of the fuel rods is going to be curium isotopes, not iodine-129. And curium isotopes need lead shielding 20 times thicker than you do for plutonium, but you can't perceive it. You can't smell it or hear it or feel it or taste it or touch it or pick it up or perceive it. And so that's, your body, though, has an instant reaction, and it's forever. So when you have an atom in your body attacks it every second, on the second, 60 times a minute, 1,440 times a day. Your body attacks all the damage, and the source tries to build a tumor around it. As you get more into your body has to produce more white blood cells to replicate that throughout your whole body. By and by, you're producing more white blood cells than red blood cells. And red blood cells, in all the species, us included, carries oxygen and nutrition. So now your immune system is compromised. Now you're more susceptible to pathogens and viruses that were normally harmless and innocuous and benign. Blech. Yeah. Xenon, 450,000 times above detection levels after Fukushima. These are catastrophic numbers. And what do you mean by persisted for weeks is you had a plume covering the entire planet that never stopped coming out. So they're talking about the perpetual plume. It was 1,200 kilometers of the coastline, lost infrastructure. So you couldn't plug an extension cord in for 1,200 kilometers. Look at it that way. But like, these tsunamis are coming in at 400 miles per hour, and they're piggybacking. So they're ingressing interior, and then another one comes in on top of it at 400 miles per hour, and then another one comes on top of that at 400 miles per hour. So the damage. So if you had a flood run through 8 foot, well, in this case, say a 30-foot flood river run through your house, do you think your house would be functional ever again? No, right? Especially at very high speeds, we're talking about enormous amount. So a nuclear plant is the same thing, right? And if you don't circulate water in the fuel pools or the reactor cores, they overpressurize and explode. That's what happened to Fukushima, were pressure explosions, not hydrogen. Hydrogen was present, but it was the pressure that caused the explosion, because you need 1 million gallons a minute. High concentrations of radiation hit the United States and Canada. The plume is rich in cesium-137, close to the surface. Excuse me. So the cesium-137, this is the French government, IRSN. I don't know if you trust them. 1 million to 10 million times pre-Fukushima levels per cubic meter of air. So this wiped out the tidal zones, right? That's why the migratory birds are starving to death, because their migratory species are missing because the food chain is broken, but they can't even go into the coastlines and scratch up a meal. And there was 30,000 insects at the high tide line. That's gone too. Right, so it should be a low tide. This the whole coastline, 27,000 islands looked like that. And I know. I was there and I done it. And I'm not. If I don't do these shows, I'll lose my mind. If I don't try to do something, if I don't say something, if I don't try to fight back in my own way, right, or some way, or whatever. I have to do something. I can't just sit there and let this happen. And censor me, there's a lot of people they know who I am. They'll find me, they'll watch, they'll learn, they'll listen, hopefully we can have a conversation one of these days on this planet. And hopefully I can be part of it, or at least my narrative can be useful. All the whales are not starving to death worldwide, every species. Like, it looks like that way, right? Because the evidence is suggesting it. But what it is they're purposely not eating food because they're angry at the nuclear industry. Clearly, that's what's going on. Yeah, they're emaciated. Yeah, they starve to death, but because they're on a hunger strike, because the whales and the seals and the sea lions and the seabirds have conspired to not eat, die of starvation. That way it makes the nuclear industry look bad. See, that makes sense. My other version of Fukushima caused broke the food chain. Like, this is almost 15 years I've been doing this. I mean, I was at this for about 24 years altogether, but since Fukushima, I'm able to appreciate the enormity of what Japan's event. This was a pulse event to our planet and the biosphere and the ecosystem, our freshwater or seawater or landmass, our populations. Because the species have generations each year, we have it every 20 years, right? So it's going to manifest. It'll manifest in the species first. Like one whale is not going to say to another whale, "I don't want to have a baby this year. I want to go down to Las Vegas and do some gambling," right? Or I got to watch Justin Bieber next year. No, that's not what happens at all. See. All right, I guess that's it tonight. Oh, excellent. Should nuclear power plants, fuel pools, be described as biological weapons and extinction machines? I got pummeled on last night's show. Holy shit. That was a good show last night. That was a great show. I only got 100 views. I only got 22 likes, and 2 of them were down. James got a new song out, which is pretty awesome. We're going in. I'm loving his graphics. Holy shit, as that man is ever accomplishing. It's unbelievable what he's able to do for that. He's just spot on. So there's so much in the industry's hid away from us, right? And so being able to visualize it some pretty cool tunes for background. It's not too shabby at all. Nuclear power plants, fuel pools. Your biggest threat is the fuel pools. There's 1,000 of them worldwide. They're hemorrhaging. Plumes covering your whole planet. So if you take a fuel pool, 1 year later, 14 months later, you take out a third of the reactor, put it into the pool. So it's still producing the same atoms as would for, say, 300,000 people that power their homes and businesses each day, each minute. Those atoms are still produced, but they're released into the environment. So now you have a death machine. After 30 days, that plume covers the whole planet, and the plume never stops coming out of that fuel pool. And because they're so tiny, but they're so harmful, they get assimilated in every species, every flora and fauna and the biotas, and eventually destroys their integrity or abilities to reproduce or exist. And 80 years down the road, after a pulse event 15 years ago, we're in a lot of trouble. You want trouble, nuclear? Oh, you got trouble. Bring you trouble. Let's go and check out what James got. 79 hours. Last night I was going to stop his video and check on it for links. Straight to the video. I clicked it. It should stop. Well, he's got a bunch of leaks down there now. He's got 3 different links for his source, his inspiration of that video. They got their YouTube channel, but they got nothing on it. But they're ready. They're linked to it, I guess, according to what I'm seeing here. Who we are and what we do. The NRC is the only ones that can make it illegal to poison you with radiation. And guess what they've never done? Is made it illegal to poison you with radiation. Virgil C. Summer nuclear plant by letter. Peachtree. I'll catch you on the other side. Hooks for everybody. I'll read that later. You take care. Just wanted to make sure you understood there was links that motivated him to make the video and the music or the background that he's going to be using. Have a great night. We'll see you hopefully tomorrow night. Take care. Looks like I had the volume off. Give me a minute. Oops. What else is new with me?
stance by the warning lamps, breathing steady while the unit holds on. 79 hours past the shutdown point, running this core past the rules they wrote. 79 hours with the feet lying down, held by a word from NLC to hold our ground. 79 hours on a clock pushed off, carrying the weight with a crew that won't back off. Hold your post, track each rise. Every late turn carries its sign. Keep that pace, check each door.